My friends, one of the greatest challenges in life is to remain silent when faced with insults. It is an instinct of our nature to defend ourselves, to assert our dignity, to make it clear that we will not be trifled with. And yet, if we examine this impulse carefully, we may find that it is not strength that urges us to react, but weakness. Strength, you see, is not measured by volume or by the force of our words. True strength is mastery over oneself. When another person speaks with scorn or disrespect, what they are truly seeking is your reaction. They wish to provoke anger, to incite frustration, to lure you into a battle where they dictate the terms. And if you surrender to this impulse, if you lash out in return, then it is not you who has won, but them. They have succeeded in drawing you down, in stripping away your composure, in reducing you to their level. Restraint, on the other hand, is one of the rarest and most formidable virtues. It is often mistaken for cowardice, yet it requires far more courage than the easy path of retaliation. To hold one's peace in the face of provocation, to choose dignity over immediate satisfaction, this is the mark of true wisdom. It is the difference between one who is mastered by their emotions and one who has learned to master them. When someone speaks to you with contempt, when they seek to undermine you, the temptation to respond is nearly irresistible. It is the voice of pride that rises within us, crying out that we must defend our honor. But here lies the irony. To act in anger is not to assert our honor, but to risk its loss. For the moment, we allow others' words to dictate our actions. We place ourselves under their power. We cease to be the author of our own conduct and become instead a mere reaction to another's offense. Restraint is not the same as ignoring an injustice. Rather, it is the choice to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. It is to see beyond the immediate sting of insult and recognize that hasty words or rash actions often lead only to regret. When we exercise restraint, we give ourselves the time to consider whether a response is truly needed, and if so, what response best serves the greater good. Now, I do not mean to suggest that restraint is an easy thing. On the contrary, it is among the most difficult of disciplines. It requires that we become students of our own nature, that we learn to recognize the first stirrings of anger before they take hold of us. It demands that we develop the habit of pausing, of breathing, of allowing a moment of reflection before we allow our emotions to dictate our course. Such mastery does not come swiftly, nor does it come without effort. It is the work of a lifetime. But let me assure you of this, the fruits of such discipline are rich indeed. For a person who is not easily provoked is a person who cannot easily be manipulated. When those who seek to unsettle you find that you are unmoved, they will soon discover that their power over you is nothing. And what is more, in maintaining your composure, you set a standard not only for yourself, but for those around you. Others will see in you a person of dignity and wisdom, a person who is not swayed by every wind of emotion, but stands firm and unshaken. Many will misunderstand this strength. Some may call it passivity. Others may mistake it for weakness. But let them misunderstand. For in the end, the truth is clear. The one who rules their own spirit is greater than the one who conquers a city. The true battle is not fought in the streets or with words, but in the depths of the human heart. And to win that battle, to rule over. Have you ever considered how much of your peace is placed at the mercy of others? It is a dreadful thing, indeed, to live in such a way that your emotional well-being is dictated by the words and actions of those around you. It means that at any moment, a mere slight, a sharp word, an unkind glance can unravel your composure. This is no way to live. But let us consider an alternative, the virtue of restraint. When you practice restraint, you reclaim your own spirit. No longer do you grant others the power to govern your peace. Instead, you build within yourself a citadel of strength, a place untouched by the winds of insult or the storms of offense. With time, you will find that things which once provoked your anger or wounded your pride now pass over you like the breeze upon the sea, noticed but not destructive. Restraint, you see, is not mere passivity. It is not cowardice, nor is it an abdication of dignity. Rather, it is a mark of wisdom. It is a demonstration that you understand not only your own emotions, but also the emotions of others. For often, when a man lashes out in anger or disdain, it is not you he is attacking, it is himself, projected outward. The frustrated man speaks cruelly, not because he hates you, but because he is burdened by his own turmoil. The insecure man belittles others, not because he is strong, but because he is weak. If you can see this, if you can understand that much of the world's hostility arises not from malice, but from brokenness, then you will not so easily take offense. To remain composed when others seek to provoke you is not only an act of self-discipline, but also an act of charity. For in refusing to meet hostility with hostility, you refuse to pour fuel upon the fire. You prevent anger from escalating into something greater, something more destructive. And more than this, you set an example. The man who governs himself well in the face of provocation earns the respect of those who witness it. He is not seen as weak, but as one who possesses a strength rarer than brute force, the strength of self-mastery. Contrast this with the man who is quick to anger. Such a man is at the mercy of every insult, every slight, every misunderstanding. His reputation over time becomes that of one easily provoked, easily manipulated. He is not a leader, but a slave to his impulses, to his wounded pride, to the ever-changing moods of those around him. And is this not a terrible fate? To be so easily swayed by the words of another, to have no anchor in oneself, to be always in a state of reaction rather than action. It is a great temptation to respond to disrespect with equal force. After all, we are creatures who long for justice. When wronged, we feel the natural urge to defend ourselves, to stand our ground, to return insult for insult. But true wisdom asks us to pause, to consider, to ask not, "How do I feel?" but "What is best?" A quick response, one born of emotion rather than thought, can do great harm. Words spoken in anger are like arrows loosed from the bow. Once they fly, they cannot be reclaimed. And how often has a single moment of unchecked fury led to regret? How often has a single word, spoken hastily, fractured a relationship beyond repair? No, my friends, we must not be governed by the impulse of the moment. Instead, we must learn the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is immediate, instinctual, often thoughtless. A response is deliberate, measured, mindful of the greater good. It does not mean we ignore wrongs, nor does it mean we become doormats for cruelty. But it does mean we choose our course wisely, ensuring that our actions align with our principles rather than with our passing emotions. And let us not forget this. When a man seeks to provoke you, he often does so with one goal: to make you lose yourself, to make you descend to his level, to wrest from you the dignity of self-control. Do not give him that victory. Instead, let him find in you a fortress unshaken, a soul unmoved by petty offenses. Let him see that you are governed not by fleeting emotions, but by something far deeper, far stronger, the quiet power of restraint. For in the end, my dear listeners, the one who controls his reaction is the one who holds the true power. He is free, while others remain enslaved to their tempers. And is that not the very essence of wisdom? To live not as a puppet to the world's provocations, but as a man anchored in truth and virtue. Let us then strive for this mastery, and in doing so, find the peace that no insult can shake. One of the most peculiar things about human nature is our tendency to give power to those who seek to unsettle us. If a man insults you, and you respond in a fit of rage, you have unwittingly handed him the reins. You have allowed his words, which may be careless or cruel, to dictate your state of mind. And in that moment, you are no longer the master of yourself. Now consider an alternative. Instead of reacting in anger, you pause, you take a breath. You consider not merely the insult itself, but the larger landscape in which it exists. Suddenly the power shifts. You are no longer reacting as a pawn in someone else's game. You are choosing your course. And my friends, that distinction is crucial. For the moment you take control of your own response, you regain authority over the entire situation. You see, when we react impulsively, particularly in the face of disrespect, we risk escalating the matter beyond its original scope. A minor slight becomes a quarrel, and a quarrel, left unchecked, can blossom into full-scale discord. But if one party exercises restraint, the chain reaction is broken. The fire is deprived of oxygen, and the flames die out before they can spread. This is not a matter of weakness, nor of cowardice, but of wisdom. To respond with composure is not to ignore wrongdoing, but to choose the appropriate moment and method for addressing it. There is a significant difference between silence born of fear and silence born of strength. The latter speaks volumes. It declares to the world that you are not easily provoked, that your character is not dictated by the moods and missteps of others. Furthermore, to exercise self-control in such moments is to cultivate a reputation of stability and wisdom. Consider the figures in your own life whom you most respect. Are they those who are quick to anger, whose tempers dictate their actions? Or are they the ones who, in times of trial, remain steady and deliberate? In truth, the one who masters his own emotions is often regarded with greater admiration than the one who masters many external affairs. Why? Because such control signals a deeper understanding of life itself. It suggests a soul unshaken by passing storms, one that sees beyond the momentary and into the eternal. Now you may wonder, does this mean we should endure all offenses without protest? Certainly not. There are times when justice demands a response, when to remain silent would be to permit wrongdoing to flourish unchecked. Yet even in such moments, the manner of our response matters. A righteous rebuke delivered in calmness is far more powerful than a frenzied outburst. The former is difficult to dismiss, the latter is easy to ridicule. Moreover, to master one's reaction is to guard one's own peace. How often do we allow trivial offenses to burden our hearts? How much energy is squandered on matters that, in the grand scheme of things, are utterly insignificant? The one who chooses restraint preserves his strength for worthier battles, for greater endeavors. At the heart of this principle lies an even deeper truth. Your worth is not dictated by the treatment you receive from others. A man may insult you, but his words do not define you. A woman may slight you, but her actions do not determine your value. Indeed, it is a grave error to believe that our dignity can be bestowed or revoked by the opinions of others. Your identity, your intrinsic worth, is fixed. It is not a thing to be bartered, nor is it dependent on the fleeting judgments of men. When you truly grasp this, the sting of disrespect loses its power over you. You no longer feel compelled to prove your value through retaliation, for you know it to be beyond dispute. And so, my friends, let us strive to be people of composure, of dignity, of unshakable self-control. Let us not be quick to anger, nor easily led into petty disputes. Instead, let us be deliberate in our responses, wise in our restraint, and ever mindful that true strength is found not in loud retaliation, but in quiet mastery of oneself. It is a curious thing, is it not? How often those who belittle others are themselves the most troubled souls. A man who is secure in his own worth has no need to tear another down. It is the insecure, the wounded, and the embittered who most readily resort to cruelty. When we grasp this truth, we find that the sting of disrespect is often dulled. The words or actions meant to insult us cease to feel like personal affronts, and instead reveal more about the one who delivered them than about ourselves. Self-respect, then, is not about demanding that others treat us well, for such a demand, however reasonable, is often beyond our control. Rather, it is about knowing when to step away from that which would degrade us. To walk away from those who seek to provoke is not an act of cowardice, but of wisdom. There are those who would seek to bait you into quarrels, to pull you into their own misery, but you are under no obligation to oblige them. Silence, when wisely applied, is not a sign of weakness, but of mastery over oneself. It speaks volumes. I will not be drawn into your bitterness. I will not descend to your level. To respect oneself is to recognize the boundaries that must not be crossed. Disrespect, at its root, is often a trespass against these boundaries. And while it is right to defend them, one must also discern the best manner of doing so. There are moments when words are required, when a firm but calm assertion is necessary. But there are also times when the wisest course is simply to remove oneself from the situation. To walk away is not to surrender. It is to refuse to give another the power to dictate your peace of mind. You see, the greatest danger in responding to disrespect is not the offense itself, but the risk of losing oneself in the process. The natural inclination is to respond in kind, to meet insult with insult, slight with slight. But this, more often than not, leads to regret. Anger clouds judgment, and words spoken in anger are rarely wise. A man who truly respects himself will not allow another's foolishness to determine his own actions. He will pause, consider, and ask himself, is this battle worth my energy? Will my response serve a purpose, or will it only entangle me in strife? To respect oneself is to be selective in one's conflicts. There are indeed times when an answer must be given, when injustice must be addressed, but not every offense merits our attention. If a dog barks at you in the street, you do not bark back. And so it is with the unkind words of men. Not every insult deserves a retort. The wise man invests his strength where it truly matters, where it aligns with his values and his purpose. It is a great tragedy, though, that many dwell far too long on past offences, replaying them endlessly in their minds, wondering what they might have said or done differently. But self-respect does not dwell in the past. It looks forward. There is no dignity in carrying resentment like a burden upon one's back. If you have been wronged, acknowledge it, learn from it, and move on. Forgiveness, after all, is not primarily for the sake of the offender, but for the well-being of the one who forgives. It is the setting down of a heavy load, the refusal to be chained to another's wrongdoing. And so, Self-respect is not merely a shield against the world's cruelties. It is a foundation upon which resilience is built. For disrespect will come. It is an inevitability of life. But those who stand firm in their worth will not crumble beneath it. They will see each challenge not as a reason to doubt themselves, but as an opportunity to reaffirm who they are. With each trial, their strength grows, their dignity deepens, and they become unshaken by the storms of life. Indeed, there is something almost infectious about true self-respect. The man who carries himself with quiet confidence, who does not bend to the whims of others, who does not lash out in pettiness, commands a kind of respect without ever needing to demand it. Others observe, and they take note. Over time, they learn that here is one who will not entertain foolishness, who will not be drawn into the trivial, and who will not be moved by mere insult. And thus, the world begins to treat him accordingly. In the end, self-respect is not about proving oneself to others. It is about knowing oneself. It is about walking with dignity, choosing one's battles wisely, and refusing to be governed by the fleeting words and actions of others. It is about living in such a way that when you look back upon your own life, you do so without shame, knowing that in all things you carried yourself as one who knew their worth and never forgot it. My friends, have you ever noticed how easily we allow others to govern our peace of mind? How often a careless remark, a dismissive glance, or a slight against our character can set our emotions aflame, as if our dignity itself were at stake. And yet I tell you, a life spent constantly reacting to every offense is not a life of strength, but of servitude. For when we allow the words and actions of others to dictate our inner state, we surrender the very sovereignty of our own souls. A man who respects himself does not live in perpetual defense. He does not hand over his peace as though it were a trinket to be snatched by the first passer-by. Instead, he builds for himself an inner stronghold, a fortress of dignity that is not so easily breached. This is not indifference, nor is it cowardice. Rather, it is wisdom, knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are mere distractions from the true purpose of one's life. Some may say, "But surely we must stand against every insult, lest we allow wrongdoing to prevail." To this, I would respond, is a general wise who scatters his forces over every minor skirmish, exhausting his men before the true war has begun? Does he not, rather, consider the field, weigh the cost, and decide where his army's strength is best spent? So too must we learn to discern. Not every offense is a call to arms. Not every slight is worth the precious currency of our time and energy. To engage in every provocation is to live a life of perpetual battle, and such a life, my friends, is a wasted one. Now let us consider this from another angle. When a man hurls an insult, what is he truly doing? Often he is revealing not a truth about you, but a deep and hidden truth about himself. People wound others as a reflection of their own inner wounds. Their disrespect may not be a calculated strike, but rather the careless flailing of a soul burdened by its own misery. And so, what does wisdom dictate? Do we meet their injury with injury, or do we recognize that their words are the echoes of their own suffering? There is a profound strength in restraint. A man who masters his emotions is a man who cannot be ruled by them. Some insults, some offenses, will indeed require a response. There are times when silence is not virtue, but weakness, when justice demands that we take a stand. But let us not mistake every momentary slight for a battle of great importance. We must ask ourselves, will my response correct the wrong? Will it elevate the conversation, bring clarity, or uphold truth? Or will it merely entangle me in fruitless conflict? If a response brings no light but only heat, then perhaps silence is the greater wisdom. Furthermore, we must consider the cost of our engagements. A man's mental and emotional energy is not infinite. It is a treasury to be spent with care. Those who squander it on petty disputes will find themselves bankrupt when true trials come. Imagine, if you will, a man who argues over every insignificant slight, wearing himself thin over matters of no consequence. What strength has he left for the real battles of life, the trials that demand patience, wisdom, and courage? But the man who chooses his battles wisely preserves his strength for what truly matters. He is not a reed, tossed by every wind, but a mighty oak, unmoved by the passing storm. There is, my friends, a peculiar dignity in knowing when to walk away. It is not a surrender, but a declaration. My peace is not for sale. My mind is not the battleground for your bitterness. My energy is reserved for greater things. And I assure you, when you adopt this perspective, you will find an extraordinary freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of petty grievances. Freedom from the exhausting need to defend yourself at every turn. And so, I leave you with this thought. The battles you choose define the life you live. Choose them with care, and you shall not only preserve your dignity, but also cultivate a life of greater purpose and peace. For the man who is master of his own spirit is greater than he who conquers a city. In any human relationship, whether in the office, within the family, or among close companions, there will inevitably come times of tension and disagreement. This is, of course, the natural consequence of being distinct individuals with differing perspectives, values, and experiences. Now, one of the gravest errors we can make is to assume that every disagreement is an attack upon our dignity, that every slight, real or perceived, demands an immediate and forceful response. If we are not careful, we may find ourselves engaged in ceaseless battles over trivialities, wearing down both ourselves and those we care about. And what shall we have gained in the end? A victory over pride, perhaps, but at the cost of peace. It is a mark of wisdom, then, to discern which conflicts are worthy of our energy and which are best left untouched. To overlook an offense is not always an act of cowardice. Rather, it is often a sign of maturity. By choosing which battles to fight, we declare, in a sense, that the relationship itself is more valuable than the momentary satisfaction of proving ourselves right. A man who quarrels over every slight is like one who insists on stopping to remove every stone from his path. Soon enough he will find himself so preoccupied with the pebbles that he has forgotten the journey entirely. However, let us not mistake this principle for an excuse to tolerate persistent or harmful disrespect. There are indeed times when one must stand firm and establish clear boundaries, for to allow oneself to be habitually degraded is to participate in the diminishing of one's own dignity. The wisdom lies in knowing the difference. If an insult is but a passing wind, it is best to let it blow by. But if it is a storm that threatens to uproot one's sense of worth, then a stand must be taken. And when that moment arrives, it ought to be met not with uncontrolled anger, but with the calm clarity of one who understands their own value. The man who responds in haste and fury is often left to regret his words, while the one who speaks with measured resolve commands both respect and results. Another sobering truth is this: some people, no matter how much we reason with them, will not change. There are those who seem to thrive on discord, whose very nature draws them into perpetual strife. Engaging such people in debate, hoping to reform them, is often like trying to draw water from a broken well. Nothing of use comes forth, and the effort itself is exhausting. In these cases, walking away is not an act of surrender, but of strength. To step back from a fruitless argument is to acknowledge that your energy is too precious to be squandered on someone who has no desire for resolution. Ultimately, choosing one's battles is not about submission. It is about stewardship of one's mind, emotions, and time. It is an act of self-governance, a refusal to be drawn into every conflict that presents itself. And in doing so, one finds a deeper peace, an ability to invest in matters that truly hold weight and significance. By exercising this discipline, we become not merely reactive creatures tossed about by every provocation, but deliberate souls who move through life with intention and wisdom. Thus, let us strive to master our responses, to know when to fight and when to be silent, when to stand our ground and when to step aside. In this way, we do not merely avoid unnecessary conflict. We cultivate a character of patience, discernment, and peace. And that, my friends, is a victory far greater than any quarrel could ever yield. And so, my friends, as we step away from this reflection, let's remember, true strength is not found in the loudest argument, nor in the most crushing retort, but in the wisdom to know when to stand firm and when to walk away. The battles we choose define the peace we keep. So, what will you choose? If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so we can continue this journey together. Until next time, stay wise, stay discerning, and I'll see you in the next video.